Why didn't they just say, we don't agree with his stance on LGBTQ? Why didn't they say that? Well, how is it conduct detrimental to the team? What did I do to the team? What did I do to the players?
NBA players react to Jaden Ivey's lifetime ban. Jaden Ivey went on Instagram Live, and the Chicago Bulls terminated his contract the next day. The conversation about whether he ever plays in this league again is still going, and how the players reacted, and who chose not to say a word, both tell a story. Here is everything that happened, and what it means for Jaden Ivey's future in the NBA. The post that started everything. To understand why Jaden Ivey's name is all over every NBA conversation right now, you have to understand where he was supposed to be. Ivey was selected 5th overall by the Detroit Pistons in the 2022 NBA draft out of Purdue University, where his sophomore season had put him on the radar of every front office in the league. He averaged 17.3 points, 4.9 rebounds, and 3.1 assists in that final college year, shot 46% from the field, and was named a consensus second-team All-American. His name was in the same breath as Cade Cunningham. The Pistons took him 5th and slotted him immediately into a starting role beside their franchise cornerstone, and the vision was straightforward. 2 young guards, both top 5 picks, building towards something. His rookie season delivered. He played 74 games, averaged 16.3 points and 5.2 assists, and earned NBA All-Rookie First-Team honors. He was the kind of player who could get to the rim through traffic in ways that made defenses look flat-footed, whose speed in transition left opponents at half-court watching. The Pistons were bad, 17 wins that year, but Ivey was not the reason why, and most people watching knew it. Then the injuries arrived. In January 2025, midway through what had been his most efficient season, Ivey fractured his left fibula against the Orlando Magic after a collision with Cole Anthony. Surgery, months of rehabilitation. His season was over. He later spoke openly about what that period did to him mentally. He revealed that he had experienced suicidal thoughts during his recovery, that the isolation and the physical limitations had taken him to places he had not been before. He leaned into his faith. He said Christianity became a lifeline in the worst stretch of his life. A right knee procedure in October 2025, a preseason setback, delayed his return further. When he did come back in the 2025-26 season, he averaged 8.2 points in 33 games with Detroit, a number that reflected reduced minutes, reduced explosiveness, and a role that had quietly shrunk around him while he was on the mend. The Pistons had moved on in the ways that teams do when a player's availability becomes a question mark that hangs over every planning conversation. On February 3rd, 2026, the Pistons sent Ivey to the Chicago Bulls in a 3-team deal involving the Minnesota Timberwolves. Detroit received Kevin Huerter, Dario Saric, and assets. Chicago received Ivey, his guaranteed contract, and a guard who still had a ceiling worth believing in if the body cooperated. He was going to play alongside Kobe White and Josh Giddey in a backcourt that needed his speed and his finishing ability. The Bulls needed something. Ivey needed a new start. He played 4 games. He averaged 11.5 points, 4.8 rebounds, and 4.0 assists in those 4 games, numbers that showed the skills were still present when he was healthy and trusted. Then his left knee started hurting again. The Bulls shut him down for the season and sent him to the G League's Windy City Bulls for rehabilitation. Another setback, another waiting room, another stretch of time with nothing to do but sit, rehab, and think. What Jaden Ivey did with that time was go on Instagram Live. Over a series of live streams, Ivey began posting content that centered on his Christian faith and then moved into direct criticism of the NBA's support for Pride Month. He described the league's Pride initiatives as a celebration of unrighteousness. He referenced Bible verses. He questioned whether prominent NBA figures, Stephen Curry among them, were truly surrendered to God, or whether they expressed faith only in ways the culture found acceptable. He positioned himself as someone saying the thing that other believers were afraid to say out loud, standing alone in a league that, in his view, had chosen social alignment over scripture. The words spread quickly, as words on Instagram always do when they attach themselves to an active professional athlete and a cultural flashpoint. In one of the clearest passages of his live streams, Ivey addressed his team and the league by name, asking the question at the center of his argument.
So why is it that the NBA and the Chicago Bulls say that I'm detrimental to the team? How? Because I believe in the truth? Because I know Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life?
He then went further, placing his situation inside a biblical framework that drew comparisons between himself and figures who faced persecution for their convictions. These were not offhand comments made in the heat of one moment. They were part of a sustained series of posts. He came back. He kept going. He did not walk anything back. Within hours, the Chicago Bulls had made a decision. The Bulls pulled the trigger. The statement from the Chicago Bulls on March 30th, 2026 was 17 words long. The organization released the following: "The Chicago Bulls have waived guard Jaden Ivey due to conduct detrimental to the team. Nothing about Instagram, nothing about Pride Month, nothing about the Bible or the league's inclusion initiatives, or what Ivey had said about Stephen Curry, or any of the specific content that had been spreading across social media for the previous 24 hours. They handed the world a label, conduct detrimental to the team, and then stepped back from the podium. The brevity was deliberate. Legal considerations shape these statements in professional sports, and the phrase conduct detrimental to the team is the standard contractual language that allows teams to exit a player relationship without litigating their specific reasons in a public document. It says, we have the right to do this, we are exercising it, and the conversation ends here." The Bulls were not interested in a public debate about the theology of Pride Month or the limits of religious expression in the workplace. They were interested in moving forward, and the shortest possible statement served that interest better than anything more detailed. Bulls coach Billy Donovan did speak to reporters, and his words carried the weight of someone navigating a genuinely uncomfortable situation. He said that Ivey didn't follow the Bulls organization standards. He described the broader landscape of the decision as a very delicate balance, and then he said something that cut through the professional language in a way the official statement hadn't. He said he hoped Ivey was okay. That word, okay, opened a door that the 17-word statement had tried to keep shut. It acknowledged that there was a person inside the controversy, not just a contractual situation to resolve. It gestured toward the mental health dimension of everything that had unfolded publicly without naming it directly. It was the closest the Bulls organization came to saying that they were worried about Jaden Ivey, the human being, separate from their decision about Jaden Ivey, the employee. The business logic behind the waiver was operating on several levels simultaneously, and understanding it requires understanding what Ivey actually was to the Bulls at the time of his release. He had been in the building for less than 2 months. He had played in 4 games. He was on the injury list and had been sent to the G League for rehabilitation, meaning he was not contributing to wins or losses for the active roster. His contract, worth approximately $10.1 million guaranteed for the 2025-26 season, was already committed. The Bulls were paying that money regardless of whether Ivey was on the roster or not. Waiving him did not save them money this season. It saved them something else. It saved them the association. Every day, Jaden Ivey remained a Chicago Bull. The team's name appeared in proximity to his words. Every reporter who asked about the rants would be asking it of an organization that still employed him. Every sponsor conversation would have that context sitting in the background. Every player in the locker room would carry the implicit question of whether the organization's silence on his statements constituted acceptance. The 17-word statement ended all of that in a single business day. That framework, the threshold adjusting based on value, is the uncomfortable truth underneath professional sports decisions that are almost never articulated this directly. The NBA has seen players with controversy surrounding them remain employed for years because their talent made the math work in their favor. Ivey, at this moment in his career, did not have that buffer. He was an injured guard on a short stint, averaging 8.5 points across his split season, coming off 2 years of mounting injury concerns, and he had just gone public with statements that directly confronted his employer and the league's most visible social initiative. The Bulls also had the option of a suspension. They chose not to use it. A suspension would have kept him technically connected to the organization, would have opened space for grievance proceedings through the NBPA, would have suggested a path back. A waiver was a clean break, no ambiguity, no door left ajar. It said, this relationship is complete, and we are not exploring a process of repair. Ivey becomes an unrestricted free agent once he clears waivers, free to sign anywhere. The league did not intervene with additional discipline. The commissioner did not hold a press conference. There were no fines from the NBA office. The Bulls made a unilateral decision, and the league allowed it to stand as the entirety of the institutional response. 30 teams in the league were now looking at Jaden Ivey's name on the waiver wire and deciding whether to claim him or let him pass. Every single one of them let him pass. Ivey comes back, swinging. The waiver did not quiet him, it did the opposite. After the Bulls released their statement, Ivey returned to Instagram Live with a ferocity and a clarity that suggested he had not spent any of the intervening hours reconsidering his position. He had a question, one specific, pointed, burning question, and he directed it at the organization that had just released him and the league that had allowed it to happen.
They They said my conduct is detrimental to the team.
The argument was direct, and it carried a specific kind of anger, the anger of someone who felt that the real reason for a decision had been hidden behind sanitized professional language. The Bulls had said, conduct detrimental to the team. Ivey was saying, name it, be honest. If the reason you cut me is my position on LGBTQ issues, then say that, because that is a different thing than what you put in the statement. He also wanted the record on his performance as a teammate entered into evidence.
I did nothing but practice with them, play with them, pass the ball to them, good teammate to them. Said good job, good shot. I said, good job, good pass. Way to play, bro. Right? I said these things to my teammates.
His argument drew a hard line between two things. He insisted the Bulls had illegitimately merged his conduct inside the building, the practices, the games, the interactions with teammates, and his words on Instagram Live. He was presenting himself as a player who had done nothing wrong in any professional capacity, and a person whose beliefs, expressed on his own time on his own platform, had been used to remove him from a job he was actively trying to get healthy for. He said he had been in the gym rehabbing on the day of the waiver. He said he was called a liar by the organization's implication that his conduct had been harmful to the team. He called them liars first. Reports described him in subsequent live streams, pacing at an airport, visibly emotional, the controlled rage of the earlier posts giving way to something raw and less structured. He was not reading from notes. He was not working through a prepared response with an agent. He was talking in real time to whoever was watching, and what came out was the full, unfiltered version of what it felt like to be 24 years old, coming off a fibula fracture and a knee procedure, sitting on an injury list in the G League, and then receiving a waiver notice on the same day a social media firestorm consumed your name. The mental health thread running through all of this had been present long before the Bulls cut him loose. Ivey had spoken publicly about suicidal thoughts during his fibula recovery. He had talked about the weight of isolation, about the spiritual searching that his darkest periods had sent him into, about the faith that he said had brought him through the worst of it. The live streams that generated the controversy were not calculated. They did not read like a man who had sat down and thought through the professional consequences of publicly attacking the NBA's Pride Month initiatives. They read like a man who was processing something enormous and doing it in public because that was the platform he had and the outlet that felt most available to him in the moment. That interpretation, that the rants reflected a mental health crisis as much as a theological position, became a significant part of media and player coverage immediately after the waiver. He was not speaking incoherently. He was making an argument, even if it was one that many people found offensive or misguided. The question of whether a 24-year-old in spiritual and emotional turmoil, speaking from a place of genuine conviction, constitutes someone who is experiencing a mental health episode or someone who is simply expressing views that conflict with the environment he works in is not one with a clean answer. Both can be true simultaneously. The Bulls had effectively decided the distinction did not change their decision. Whatever Ivey was going through personally, he had crossed a professional line, and they were done. They had said they hoped he was okay. They had also waived him. Those two things existed at the same time, without contradiction, which is the coldly efficient way of professional sports organizations. What NBA players actually said. In a league where players speak constantly about contracts, about social issues, about the food at arenas, about each other, the collective response to Jaden Ivey's waiver from active NBA players was remarkable in its near total absence. The silence from the locker rooms of the NBA was vast and deliberate, and, in its own way, the loudest thing that was said. The most substantive public response from a current player came from Josh Giddey, the Bulls guard who had shared a locker room and a backcourt with Ivey, however briefly, over the preceding 2 months. Speaking to reporters after Chicago's loss to the San Antonio Spurs on the same evening the waiver was announced, Giddey offered the kind of careful, calculated empathy that is the verbal equivalent of walking a tightrope without looking down. He's a very talented player. Obviously, the whole thing is kind of unfortunate in a way. I hope he gets the help he needs, whatever he's going through or not going through. I do really hope he gets help. It's not going to be with the Bulls anymore, but wherever it is, I hope he gets it. Every single word in that response was deliberate. Giddey praised Ivey's talent. That was safe, indisputable, and generous. He called the situation unfortunate. Not wrong, not bigoted, not harmful, not any of the words his organization or critics of Ivey's posts might have chosen. He expressed hope twice in quick succession that Ivey would receive help, conspicuously declining to define what that help might be or what problem it was supposed to address. He did not endorse the rants. He did not condemn them. He did not engage with the substance of Ivey's views on Pride Month, on the NBA's inclusion initiatives, on Stephen Curry, on any of the specific specific content that had made the situation a news story. He opened and closed with care for a fellow player and said nothing that could be clipped, extracted, and used to make him a character in a controversy he had no interest in joining. It was a performance of restraint, and it was exceptionally well executed. The next significant response came not through language, but through clothing, which is to say it came through a medium that allows for complete deniability. Dallas Mavericks center Daniel Gafford appeared at a press conference wearing a t-shirt that read, "Faith isn't for the weak." When reporters asked whether the shirt was a reference to the Ivey situation, Gafford's response was a masterwork of strategic deflection. "I didn't even really see what it had said until you said something about it. But, I mean, faith isn't for the weak because God gives his test to his strongest soldiers." Most definitely. I really can't go deep into that with the stuff that's going on with the Ivey situation, so we're gonna keep it at that point. He named the Ivey situation, confirmed he was aware of it, agreed with the sentiment on his shirt, and then immediately refused to go further. The shirt was a signal sent to a specific audience, those who shared his faith and who were watching the situation through the lens of religious conviction, without constituting a statement that could be held against him professionally. He wore it on his chest where everyone could see it. When asked what it meant, he explained what he could not explain further. This is how a current NBA player with a contract and a team and a front office and sponsors communicates a position he is not permitted to communicate directly. Los Angeles Lakers forward Jake LaRavia posted a Bible verse on Instagram in what was widely read as a show of solidarity with Ivey's spiritual position. Again, without naming him, without addressing the specific content, without providing anything that could constitute a quotable statement on the actual controversy. Former NBA player Nick Young, a one-time teammate of Stephen Curry's in Golden State, went in the opposite direction on Instagram, pushing back on the way Ivey had used Curry as a reference point in his rants. Young took issue with the implication that Curry was insufficiently devoted to his faith. Young, as a former player without a current contract or team, had the freedom to say something more specific than anyone still drawing an NBA paycheck, and he used it narrowly. Those were essentially the public positions from the active NBA community. Giddey's measured empathy, Gafford's symbolic t-shirt, LaRavia's Bible verse, and Young's defense of Curry. The names who said nothing defined the landscape of what was actually possible inside the league. Cade Cunningham, who had played alongside Ivey in Detroit, who was his former backcourt partner, who had watched him develop over multiple seasons, made no verified public statement. Circulating social media posts referenced a vague message from Cunningham to Ivey, but no confirmed. Quotes, videos, or posts from him directly addressing the situation have materialized. LeBron James, who has been the most outspoken active player on social and cultural matters for a decade, said nothing. Stephen Curry, who had been named directly in Ivey's rants, challenged to be more publicly surrendered to God, said nothing. A silence that was likely legally and professionally prudent regardless of what he privately thought about being criticized by a former fellow player. Anthony Edwards said nothing. The silence from the highest levels of the league's star ecosystem was total. Outside the NBA, the response was strikingly different. NFL players including Azariah Thomas and Wanye Thomas posted Bible verses and messages framing Ivey's situation in terms of faith under fire. Trevayon Henderson weighed in similarly. Political figures called for Ivey to pursue legal action. College basketball coach Bruce Pearl criticized the league's response. Social media influencers and commentators from outside professional basketball engaged with the story with a directness that active NBA players could not afford. Former NBA players, operating without current contracts and without the institutional pressures that keep active rosters quiet, filled some of the space. Jeff Teague on Club 520 and Kwame Brown on YouTube engaged with the situation at length, debating religious conviction, workplace professionalism, and the dynamics of a league that markets itself as progressive.
And this kind of reminds me of when Mark Jackson, who was the coach of the Golden State Warriors, kind of the same thing, very religious, to a point of now he's can't even get a coaching job no more.
That observation, that attacking the league itself, not just a team, was the line that transformed a workplace conflict into something career-defining, cuts precisely to why so many active players said nothing. Agreeing with Ivey, even obliquely, meant agreeing with a critique of the very entity that employed them. Disagreeing with him placed them on the record against a fellow player's expressed faith. The only safe ground was silence, or the carefully calibrated near silence of a t-shirt and a Bible verse. The players who knew how this worked chose accordingly. Is this really a lifetime ban? Here is the factual baseline. The Chicago Bulls waived Jaden Ivey on March 30th, 2026. He cleared waivers. He is an unrestricted free agent. He is free in every formal, legal, official sense to sign with any NBA team willing to put a contract in front of him. There is no commissioner's decree. There is no disciplinary ruling from the league office. There is no formal sanction that bears Jaden Ivey's name and the phrase lifetime ban anywhere in its language. The NBA's conduct policies could have produced a suspension. They were not invoked. The organization that employed him made a unilateral business decision, and the league did not pile on with additional action. What happened to Jaden Ivey was a waiver, not a ban, and the distinction carries legal and professional weight that matters enormously for understanding what comes next. But a door can be functionally shut without being officially locked. The NBA's history offers a set of comparison points that illuminate the range of outcomes for players who generate this kind of controversy, and the range is wide. Kyrie Irving is the most recent prominent case. Irving's combination of anti-vaccine statements, flat earth theories, and most damagingly, hosts sharing content associated with anti-Semitic material generated a suspension from the Brooklyn Nets and a public reckoning that lasted months. Irving eventually signed with the Dallas Mavericks. He went to the finals. He is still in the league. The reason he came through it is that his talent is of a caliber that makes the business calculation resolve in his favor, even with significant baggage attached. He is the kind of player whose presence on a roster changes the ceiling of a team's season. Front offices can talk themselves into absorbing extraordinary amounts of surrounding noise when the talent justifies it. Jaden Ivey, at this moment in his career, is not that kind of player. Not because his ceiling doesn't exist, it does, and it is real, but because the path to that ceiling has been obstructed by 2 years of serious injury, and the floor of what he can reliably contribute right now is not at a level that overcomes the calculation. He averaged 8.5 points in the 2025-26 season across his time with both Detroit and Chicago. He played 37 games. A team considering his name on the waiver wire is not looking at a healthy 24-year-old with 3 full seasons of elite production behind him. They are looking at a player who has been hurt for 2 of the last 3 years, whose explosion off the dribble is still in some question after the fibula fracture, and who generated one of the more polarizing news cycles of the NBA season in a matter of days. Jonathan Isaac is the counterexample worth examining, the player who demonstrates that faith-based conviction does not automatically end a career in the NBA. Isaac, the Orlando Magic forward, has navigated public stances on COVID-19 vaccines and social justice that put him at odds with prevailing league and cultural sentiment, and he remains employed, respected, and competitive. The difference between Isaac's situation and Ivey's is not their beliefs. Both are devout Christians who have expressed those beliefs publicly. It is the nature of their public expression. Isaac has stated his positions. He has not used his platform to directly attack the organization that employs him, to name his league's commercial partnerships as spiritually wrong, or to challenge specific colleagues by name. He drew a line between personal conviction and employer confrontation, and he stayed on the right side of it. Ivey did not stay on that side. The Mark Jackson parallel is the darkest version of this trajectory, and it is the one that should concern anyone invested in Ivey's future. Jackson built the Golden State Warriors into a playoff team, establishing the defensive culture and the early development of players who would go on to win championships under a different coach. He was fired. He has not held an NBA head coaching job since. The conventional wisdom around his absence from sidelines centers on his faith-based leadership style and the locker room dynamics it created, as well as his public profile as an outspoken Christian broadcaster. He is a man whose contributions are acknowledged and whose phone does not ring from NBA front offices. That outcome, professionally capable, publicly available, effectively excluded, is the cautionary shadow that hangs over what Ivey's future could look like. The other piece of this is what happens to a player's name and its commercial associations after a controversy of this nature. Teams in the NBA carry sponsors. They carry brand partnerships. They carry Pride Night events that generate revenue, goodwill, and community engagement. Adding a player who has publicly called those initiatives celebrations of unrighteousness creates complications that go beyond the locker room and into conversations with partners and stakeholders that no general manager wants to have. The math on whether Jaden Ivey is worth those conversations has to clear a higher bar than it would for a player arriving without that noise around his name.
It's a privilege to play in the NBA. It's not a right, but with that privilege comes conditions that he did not meet. You cannot go scorched earth on the league and expect to have nothing happen.
Wrote his own ending is the line that will stick. And yet, as of now, it is not the end. At 24 years old, with a career points per game average of 14.8, before injury reduced him, Ivey still has the physical tools that made him a top 5 pick. His brief 4-game stint in Chicago showed shooting percentages: 41.7% from the field, 38.1% from 3. That suggests the skills are intact when the body is healthy and the role is defined. There will be a team somewhere, eventually, with a minimum deal and an open roster spot, and a front office willing to bet that the talent outweighs the surrounding noise. Players have returned from worse. The question is whether Ivey, on his end, is prepared to separate the platform from the profession in a way he was either unwilling or unable to do in March 2026. What no one outside his orbit can answer is whether he wants that separation. His post-waiver live streams did not suggest a man recalibrating his approach to public communication. They suggested a man who believed he was right, who believed the organization had been dishonest in how it characterized its decision, and who was going to keep saying so regardless of the professional cost. That posture may change. He is 24. People change. Circumstances change. The financial cushion of a $10.1 million guaranteed salary gives him time to think without the immediate pressure of needing a paycheck. A lifetime ban is a door that has been permanently, officially, irreversibly shut. What Jaden Ivey is facing is something different, and depending on your perspective, something harder. A door that remains technically open, where every team on the other side is standing back, arms crossed, watching to see who he decides to be next. That question, who Jaden Ivey is going to be next, is the only question that matters now, and it is entirely unanswered. Thanks for watching. Check out other cards on the screen.